weapon to surpass Metal Gear.
From the creator of Gantz comes an autofill result that will scar Inuyasha fans for life. The fall 2017 anime series Inuyashiki follows our titular protagonist, the middle-aged man Ichirou Inuyashiki, whose appearance makes him look far older than he actually is. This is coupled with him dealing with chronic pains, an unloving family, a tedious desk job, and the eventual findings that he has stomach cancer and only 3 months left to live. After finding a stray, abandoned dog, which is seemingly the only creature that has ever shown any meaningful affection and love for the man, and while crying alone in an empty park at night and wondering if anyone would even cry if he were to tell them about his cancer. These worries and doubts, however, are interrupted by a tear in the very reality in front of him when something strikes the earth, seemingly taking his life and the life of a mysterious young man standing beside him. Shockingly though, Ichirou wakes up to not only find that he's actually alive, but all of his chronic pain, dry mouth, and effects of old age are gone, as well as the cancer he was only just diagnosed with earlier that week. However, he quickly begins to find that he's very much not the same man as the night before. Ichirou soon finds out he is more machine than he is man. He's a walking weapon of mass destruction. He uses his newfound powers and second chance at life to save those who can't save themselves, all while learning more about his new arsenal of tools and abilities, why this has happened to him, and the inevitable destiny of encountering the young man who has also changed that night and the different path he took. Talking about the morbidly obese elephant in the room here, let's go into a bit about animation and art quality of Inuyashiki, and more specifically its heavy use and reliance of CGI. In my previous video on Land of the Lustrous, I spent 11 minutes singing the praises of the immense highs that I feel CG animation can reach, and why in many regards it can be superior or more impactful than traditional 2D. But with Inuyashiki, it is very much a different story, as instead of being full CG, it's one of the countless hybrid series that use both 2D and 3D, and while at times this can be rather jarring for the viewer, I feel like MAPPA didn't have much of a choice here. When you're trying to adapt and animate a series about an old man becoming basically a complex mechanical superweapon who flies around Japan, singing the Astro Boy theme song while his back literally opens up, revealing the intricate machinery within, it's simply feasibly impossible to do this in 2D with a typical anime budget. I get that, and for the most part it almost always looks pretty darn good, and you can tell that they spent a lot of time figuring out the logistics of the model. But sadly, the 2D old man and the 3D old man are simply just not the same character, no matter how much I try to fool myself. There's just something visibly off about it, and that can be contributed mostly to the faces just not really matching at all. Also, bringing up even more concern is MAPPA's choice to randomly use CG models for literally no reason. Like one scene you have a close-up of Ichirou's 2D face, and the next you have, for whatever reason, the CG model is used for a simple scene like him walking down a hallway. It's jarring. It's just something that maybe I would have gotten used to watching the show week by week, but for a series that I binged and caught up within the span of one night, the constant switches in what Studio MAPPA feels should be and shouldn't be 3D just seems like a poor decision. Fight choreography is always an important part of any good mature action-based story you're trying to tell, but Inuyashiki sort of goes out of its way to make many of the early fights and exchanges so laughably hilarious to help the viewer connect and root for the cute old man trying his hardest to be the lone hero in a villainous world. The frail, frantic, and loose jabs of the meandering old man as he attempts to fight back against offenders is not only comically fitting for someone who hasn't fought a day in his life, but all the more satisfying when any of the what appear to be weak hits land, only to deal an incredible amount of impact is just immensely satisfying to watch, and truly something the series excels in. Taking a quick look at the two distinctive main characters, Ichirou the old man who's given a second chance at life and the chance to be a hero, saving others in order to truly feel alive, and Hiro, who ironically isn't the hero, the manga-loving high school student with a twisted personality who casually takes lives and causes mayhem in order for himself to feel alive, leaves two sides to a very polarizing coin. While I can't fault this dynamic for being anything less than vastly engaging and answering the many questions that arise if you were to ask someone, if you were to one day wake up as what can only be defined as a literal god, what would you do? Well, I find that Inuyashiki would rather explore the destruction, mayhem, blood, gore, and action associated with the act rather than exploring the active philosophy itself. Behind it, I still can't fault the Gantz creator for making a far more simple, concise narrative, at least compared to Gantz, that's a bloody good time to watch first, and then taking the brief moments of downtime to explore the good versus evil dilemma and the motivating factors for either side. While I appreciate the separation of good and evil between the main characters, I find that this cannot be said for the side characters. It is just laughably simplistic to the point of just being painfully comedic and unrealistic. And yes, while it seems weird I'm nitpicking a series that clearly tries not to take itself too seriously, for the most part it's still very much a mature and dark story, and if none of the characters impacted or hurt by the many tragic events that occur in any given episode don't feel believable, then what's the actual point? Taking a look at the first episode, towards the end we need to set up a scene between the aggressors, who are a bunch of high school students, and the victim, who is a homeless man, which shouldn't be something too hard to do. Naturally, the viewer should be rooting in favor of the victim regardless, but the fact that he's down on his luck should be more than enough to define both sides pretty clearly without wasting too much of the viewer's time. But for whatever reason, Inuyashiki doesn't just take it a step forward, it takes it and fucking does a full-on sprint with it. Between having the homeless man clutching a photo of a far better time, and making contact with his assumed to be ex-wife, and given another chance at their relationship, getting a job, and having the chance to move into his own place in the morning, do we really need this kind of setup when we already know what the payoff is before the scene even starts? On the other side, we have the high school students who don't visually appear to be punks, who basically just come out and say, yeah, we're gonna fucking kill this guy, and start launching fireworks at him, setting him on fire, and then beating him to death with bats. All while talking about how you have to be careful not to hit their heads because then they stop moving and aren't fun to play with anymore. Like what? I know the creator of Gantz is known for his love for near senseless violence, but when just about every scene similar to this needs this level of pointless setup episode after episode, you have to ask yourself, what's the actual point anymore? Inuyashiki is a weird series both in its creation and design. While on one hand it's a far more realized and evolved form of Oku's vision and storytelling, but on the other hand it's a bit of a mess when it comes to inconsistency in animation and motivation. But what a fun mess it is. It's fast-paced almost to a blistering degree, bloody, sexy, eventful, and surprising. While the later half of the anime is far more engaging and superior to some of the earlier ones in terms of scope, the complete package is just something so raw and entertaining it's hard not to recommend the series to those looking for something new. Whether it be the weird concept, watching an old man slug it out with the Yakuza, or just want a little odd series to binge on a lazy Sunday, there is something here for basically everybody, assuming you aren't opposed to a little bit of blood and gore, and the occasional scene of a child drowning under the weight of his father's corpse in a bloody bathtub of... Here we have a character within the Inuyashiki universe defending Gantz in a room covered in only Gantz volumes and posters. I wonder who the original author of this manga is.